What exactly is the story Hades trying to tell? Rebellious teenager fighting against patriarchal control? A tragic Sisyphus-like story with an underlying existentialist metaphor? Or a happy ending story of family reunion? In fact, Hades tells all three stories, and your understanding of the game philosophy depends largely on which stage of the game you're in. As the winner of the 2021 Game of the Year award, Hades has so many wonderful features. The energetic sound, the elegant American comic style setting, the smooth control, and the smart blow feedback all contribute a lot. However, today I'm going to focus on the narrative of the game and its underlying philosophy. I would argue that Hades, by successfully merging attributes of roguelike games with advancing narrative after each step, creates different interpretations and philosophies in different stages of the game. As players progress in the knowledge of the game, their feelings and understandings of the game progress accordingly. In particular, I think there are three stages of the game where people might generate different understandings of the game philosophy. The first stage is from the beginning to the first time you see the Persephone. And the second stage is from the first time you see Persephone until her return. And the third and final stage is the final ending. However, before introducing the details of these three stages of the game, let me first respond to some review saying that Hades is not a real roguelike game because it does not follow the rules of permanent death. Well, admittedly, Hades belongs to the subset of roguelite games, which means that you get to keep something every time you die. In the case of the Hades, you get to keep Thonic keys, gemstones, and darkness after each death. You can use keys to unlock new weapons, use gemstones to do renovations for the house, use darkness to upgrade your abilities before the magic mirror, and use ambrosia to increase affinity with either Olympian gods or Thonic gods. I think that Hades is a perfect roguelike game because its background setting seamlessly rationalizes the crucial game mechanic of roguelike game, which is permanent death and resurrection. How can you account for your countless deaths in roguelike games? Why do you resurrect every time? Well, in Hades, for Dagrius, when the hell is your hometown and your father is Hades, then everything suddenly makes sense. Therefore, Hades did a fantastic job of choosing context for a roguelike game. What's more, the progressing narrative is also crucial to the attribute of roguelike game, which is you gain the knowledge of the game through each dance. In Hades, you can almost have conversations with everyone in the house of Hades and with Olympian gods during these games. Through these conversations, you get to know more about the narrative of the game and develop your own interpretations in the end. In fact, this lays the foundation for all three interpretations of the game, which I'm going to turn to in a minute. Well, how about let's now get to it. At this stage, all we know is that Zagreus is trying to escape from the underworld and get out of the control of his father Hades. Wait, a rebellious child with harsh parents? Doesn't that strike a chord to you? Well, at least for me, it does a good job. But I believe we all had this kind of experience back in teenage years when we disagreed with our parents and got sick of them controlling everything and prescribing everything in our lives. No matter what they ask us to do, the most automatic action will be to disobey. And I think this creates a wonderful game mechanic when Zagreus escapes by jumping out of the window and throw. But in the first few escapes, we feel like that young man trying to prove ourselves with more killings and sticking out for more rounds. Every time I die and get back to the house of Hades, the father's mockery always makes me feel full of fighting spirit. Ever since we learned about the true meaning of escaping from the underworld, we'll give ourselves a mission, a purpose in these escapes, which is to see Persephone, Zagreus' real mother. After dozens of escapes, Zagreus fights all his way out, beating countless enemies, even his own father Hades. He finally meets with his mother. However, at this very moment, when both Zagreus and I thought this is going to be the end of the game because we have already fulfilled our purpose of escaping the underworld, when this time, fate gives us a heavy hate in our hand, bringing Zagreus back to the house of Hades, where Zagreus is bound by fate never to leave. At this very moment, as a player, I could feel what Zagreus must be feeling, which is a sense of absurdity. We will begin to question the meaning of this escape. Well, this process of escape is just like what Sisyphus does. By the way, Sisyphus, as a figure of Greek mythology, was condemned to repeat forever the same meaningless task of pushing a boulder up a mountain, only to see it roll down again. The famous existentialist writer Albert Camus wrote The Myth of Sisyphus. What a coincidence, right? A philosophical essay in which he introduces his philosophy of absurdity. According to Camus, absurdity lies in the juxtaposition between the fundamental human need to attribute meaning to life and the unreasonable silence of the universe in response. In this book, Camus compares absurdity of man's life with the situation of Sisyphus and argues that life itself is absurd and has no meaning at all. However, instead of giving up or choosing to suicide in the face of meaningless life, the right attitude is to fight against absurdity by enjoying it in every moment. Well, to sum up in a rather unprofessional way, carpe diem. The Hades, by organically merging Greek mythology with existentialist philosophy, create a tragic yet beautiful Zagreus myth for players. The journey of the game is just like that of everyone's life, and just like Zagreus, we are the protagonists in our own game of life. The enemies and bosses we face in the game resemble the obstacles we encounter in our lives. Repetition, randomness, all these key features of roguelike games, also the most vivid reality of everyday lives. There are too many cases in which we put so much effort into something, and the last moment when we think we will put it off, we fail and are set back to square one. What we should learn from Hades and the existentialist philosophy is that even though life itself has no inherent meaning and is full of absurdity, the best way to live is not to sit tight or lie down, but to fight. Fighting absurdity itself is worth living. Well, just like what Camus concluded in the last chapter of his book, the struggle itself is enough to fill the man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. And finally, here we come to the final chapter of the game. After so many escapes and beating stronger and stronger enemies, we finally get Persephone back to the house of Hades. And Hades even puts up a feast to invite all Olympian gods over and have a reunion. Though I never get this far myself, it gives players a happy ending. Well, as for the game design, most players want to see happy endings, aren't they? However, it remains to open discussion that without this final happy ending, will the philosophy of the game be more consistent? Oops, we're almost out of time, so let me do a quick sum up here. All in all, Hades is a superb game in every aspect. Through organic merging of roguelike game mechanics, Olympian context, and progress in storyline, Hades makes players feel differently during different stages of the game and have different interpretations of the game philosophy. See you next time!